All right, so you drew out your spinal cord, you drew out your spinal nerve. Now we're going to add this to the basic cross section of really, it's no longer our embryo. We started to develop much more, and this is more akin to the basic cross section of an adult. And I see there's some things I probably need to change a little bit here. But what you want to remember is you should figure out dorsal, you should figure out ventral because we have a clear arrangement of things. So remember, in the adult, we're looking for the vertebra. The vertebra is going to show you where your dorsal. In this case, I've drawn my vertebra here, where I have a spinous process, a transverse process, and then I have my body of my vertebra. This is my intervertebral foramen. Sorry, that's my vertebral foramen right there. So that should represent dorsal hollow nerve tube, and then notochord would be where the body of the vertebra was. And then the next tube is dorsal aorta, and then the next tube is the gut tube, right? And then the gut tube here is surrounded by our coelom. We have our dorsal mesentery, we have our ventral mesentery. You should at least be able to like draw some of that in basics, a circle, a circle, a circle with a coelom around it. If you didn't know how to do that, make sure you go watch the other video and learn how to do that, okay? The hypaxial and axial muscles that are on here, you're going to learn how to draw later. So the thing we're going to add to this cross section is we're going to draw our spinal cord and our spinal nerve, and we're going to label everything. So it's really easy. We're going to see that we're going to have, wow, that didn't end up being like circle at all. We're going to see that we have our spinal cord. So at the center of our spinal cord, we have our central canal right there. And then we're going to have a right and a left hemisphere. So our spinal cord kind of looks a little bit like that, right? And then you could just color it in if you want to. You could put your little gray matter butterfly in there if you really want to, but you don't have to. You could actually just draw a circle if you want to. It's a lot easier to just be like, oh, there's my spinal cord, okay? Or even more simply, there's my spinal cord. So that's going to be my spinal cord, okay? So we're going to see that coming off of the spinal cord on the posterior aspect, we're just going to have a little arc right there. And part of our arc is going to have a bubble on it. And then this is going to be the anterior side. Remember, that's where the cell body is. And we're going to arc over like that. And then we're just going to simply make a straight line. So I'm going to label these things, okay? Hopefully my labels don't get too out of hand here. But we're going to see our label here is our spinal cord. Okay, and then we're going to label this as our dorsal root. And let me change my color here because the black over that is a little bit difficult. So this is my dorsal or posterior root. You can call it whichever one you want to. I just usually remember dorsal root. And then that bubble, hopefully you know that's the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, and then this one is the ventral root. Can you draw rootlets? I mean, sure, it's a little harder to draw the rootlets, so I would just say just draw the roots, okay? And then this becomes the spinal nerve. The hardest part is labeling this because it's a little bit small. Then we're going to see that the spinal nerve goes through the intervertebral foramen, and it's going to go backwards like that. And so when it goes backwards, this is the dorsal ramus, which is going to innervate this muscle in the back here. These are the epaxial muscles. Should gone by lab by now. These are our erector spinae muscles. So it's going to help us with extension of our back. And then this will also innervate the skin, which is the black exterior line. Then it's also going to branch and it's going to come forward, and it's going to be the ventral ramus. Okay, so the ventral ramus is a little harder to figure out how to draw because you have to know that there's 3 layers of hypaxial muscles right here. So I'm going to label these because by now you should have gone to lab. And these 3 hypaxial muscles are the 3 lateral hypaxial muscles that you've learned. This is external oblique. This is internal oblique. And then we have transversus abdominis. And then last one, these 2 in the front are rectus abdominis. Okay, so here on your PowerPoint, I did this, and then I did that, and these are all hypaxial muscles. The only reason why I'm labeling them now is I want you to see where this ventral root's going to go. The ventral root is going to come like that. This is kind of why it's really like weird to draw a little bit. But the ventral root's going to go between the transversus abdominis and the internal oblique layers and come all the way forward. And hopefully you could draw a little bit straighter. Sorry, my artist pad is not the greatest artistic way to render things. So this is going to be my ventral ramus. Ventral or anterior ramus. So you see how the ventral ramus is going to innervate everything on the lateral side and the anterior side of the body. And what we're also going to see is the ventral rami, which is plural for ramus, is also going to innervate the limbs. So here we can say dorsal ramus does the back. Let's just do this. Back, skin, and muscles. The ventral ramus is going to do the lateral and anterior. Or if you'd rather go with back, this will be lateral and front. Those are not really anatomical terms, but it's okay. Muscles and skin. In addition, it's going to do the limbs. So upper limb and lower limb, skin, and muscles in terms of innervation. Maybe this will kind of help you remember a little bit what's going on. So here, this section we're taking at the abdomen, and that's why you have obliques. In order to see the leg and the arm, you'd have to take your section much lower, and that's going to be much too complicated. So we're just going to do our basic cross-section at our abdomen level to understand that. Okay, if you take it at the thorax, these muscles are also different as well. That's something you should have learned in lab. So it's how you draw your basic anatomy for how to create the spinal nerve on this cross-section. You should know how to do this and how to label everything for an exam.